The Dominion had never lost a war. In 10,000 years of conquest, their black warships had darkened the skies of 164 worlds. They had crushed empires that spanned entire star systems. They had broken civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Every species they faced had two choices: surrender or die. Most chose surrender. Those who chose to fight simply delayed their surrender by a few days. Commander Thorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Night, and watched his fleet move through the darkness of space. 147 warships followed behind him like a swarm of metal insects. Each ship carried enough firepower to burn a continent. Together, they could crack a planet in half. Thorn was tall and thin, with gray skin that stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes were black and empty, like holes cut into his skull. He had commanded the Dominion's fleets for 300 years. He had personally overseen the conquest of 31 worlds. He had never failed. "Commander," said his second officer, a younger named, "we are approaching the target system." Thorn looked at the display screen. A small yellow star floated in the center, surrounded by 8 planets. The third planet was their target, a small blue world covered in water and white clouds. The inhabitants called it Earth. "Tell me about them," Thorn said. Pulled up the scout reports. "They call themselves humans. They have existed for approximately 300,000 years. They developed space travel only recently. Their technology is primitive. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear fission. They have no energy shields, no fold space drives, no planet-killer weapons." Thorn almost smiled. "Almost. Military strength. Fragmented. They have divided their planet into approximately 200 separate nations. These nations often fight each other. They have no unified defense force. They spend more resources killing each other than preparing for external threats." Estimated time for conquest. Checked his calculations. 6 standard days, perhaps less. Thorn nodded. This would be an easy victory. Another world added to the Dominion's long list of conquests. Another species broken and enslaved. He felt nothing about this. He had stopped feeling anything about conquest long ago. It was simply what the Dominion did. It was simply what he did. "Begin approach," he ordered. "Send the standard subjugation demand." Far below, on the blue planet called Earth, Captain Park received the transmission. She was sitting in her office at the United Nations Defense Initiative headquarters in Seoul when her computer screen went black. Then a face appeared. Gray skin, black eyes, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Species of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Dominion. You will surrender all planetary resources. You will surrender all population centers. You will surrender all technology. Resistance will result in extinction. You have 72 hours to comply." The screen went dark. Sat very still for a long moment. She was 38 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes that rarely showed what she was thinking. She had spent 15 years in the military, rising from a young lieutenant to the captain of Earth's first and only planetary defense unit. She had trained for this moment. Everyone had told her it would never come. Everyone had been wrong. She pressed a button on her desk. "Get me Major, get me Dr. Lee, get me Sergeant Shin, get me everyone, now." Within an hour, her team had assembled in the underground command center beneath the city. Major was a big man with a soldier's bearing and a strategist's mind. Dr. Lee was small and quiet, with glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. She was the world's leading expert on theoretical. Sergeant Shin was young and eager, a genius with machines and systems who could build a radio from spare parts or hack any computer ever made. Showed them the transmission. When it finished, the room was silent. "So," said finally, "how do we fight them?" Shook her head. "We cannot fight them. Did you see those ships? 147 of them. Any single one could destroy every military force on Earth. We have nothing that can even scratch their shields." "Then we surrender?" asked. "No," said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. We do not surrender and we do not fight, not the way they expect. She stood up and walked to the large screen on the wall. She pulled up everything they had gathered about the Dominion over the past decade. Scattered signals, intercepted transmissions, rumors from deep space probes. It was not much, but it was enough. The Dominion has conquered 164 civilizations, she said. Every single one of them tried to fight back with military force. Every single one of them lost. They had a fleet of 10,000 ships. They had weapons that could destroy stars. They had soldiers who felt no pain and no fear. All of them lost. All of them are now slaves. Then what chance do we have? Asked. Turn to face them. We have the only chance that matters. We are going to do something none of them ever tried. What? We are going to make them wish they had never come here. Not by destroying their ships, not by killing their soldiers. We are going to make this conquest so difficult, so painful, so exhausting that they will regret it forever. And more importantly, we are going to show every enslaved species in this galaxy that the Dominion can be resisted. She thought of her grandmother who had survived occupation, war, and poverty, who had told her stories of a people who had been invaded again and again for 5,000 years and had never stopped fighting, never stopped existing, never stopped being themselves. We will not beat them with strength, said. We will beat them with stubbornness. We will beat them with patience. We will beat them by being impossible to hold. The room was quiet, then nodded slowly. Tell us what to do. Looked at her team, 3 people, against an empire that had conquered galaxies. The odds were impossible. The situation was hopeless. She smiled. First, she said, we empty the cities. The Dominion fleet emerged from fold space above the Pacific Ocean on a Tuesday morning. The sky turned dark as 147 warships blocked out the sun. People all over the world stopped what they were doing and looked up. Some screamed. Some cried. Some simply stood there, frozen, waiting for the end. Commander Thorne watched the blue planet from his bridge. It was a beautiful world, he had to admit. The ocean sparkled. The clouds swirled in elegant patterns. It would make a fine addition to the Dominion's empire. Its resources would fuel their war machines for centuries. Its population would serve as workers, soldiers, and whatever else the Dominion required. Broadcast the final warning, he ordered. His voice echoed across every radio frequency, every television channel, every phone and computer on the planet. People of Earth, your 72 hours have expired. Surrender now or face destruction. There was a long silence. Then a single transmission came back. It was a woman's voice, calm and clear. We decline. Thorne blinked. In 300 years he had never heard those words. Species begged. Species negotiated. Species offered tribute and slaves and anything else they had. No one simply said no. Repeat that, he said. We decline, the voice said again. This is Captain Park of the United Nations Defense Initiative. We will not surrender our planet. We will not surrender our people. We will not surrender anything. If you want Earth, you will have to take it. Looked nervous. Commander, should I order the fleet to begin bombardment? Thorne considered this. He could simply burn the planet clean. It would take less than an hour. But that would destroy the resources he wanted. It would kill the workers he needed. The Dominion did not conquer worlds to destroy them. The Dominion conquered worlds to use them. No, he said. Send the ground forces. Take the major population centers. Show them what happens to those who resist. 10,000 Dominion soldiers loaded into drop ships and descended toward Earth. They landed in 12 different locations across the globe. 3,000 of them came down in the Korean peninsula, aiming for Seoul. Their orders were simple: capture the city, round up the population, execute anyone who resisted. The dropships landed in the heart of the city. Soldiers poured out, weapons ready, expecting chaos and terror. They found empty streets. The city was abandoned. Not a single human remained. The buildings stood silent and dark. Cars sat frozen in the roads. Food rotted on restaurant tables. It was like everyone had simply vanished. "Spread out," ordered the battalion commander. "Find them." The soldiers moved through the empty streets in perfect formation. They checked buildings, searched homes, scanned for life signs. Nothing. The humans had disappeared like ghosts. Then the first explosion happened. A building collapsed on a squad of 20 soldiers, burying them under tons of concrete and steel. Before anyone could react, a second explosion took out a transport vehicle. Then a third. Then a fourth. The streets that had seemed empty moments ago became death traps. Every building was rigged. Every road was mined. Every shadow hid a surprise. The soldiers tried to fight back, but there was nothing to fight. No enemy soldiers. No defensive positions. Just explosions and collapsing buildings and booby traps hidden in every corner. They shot at shadows. They fired at empty windows. They wasted their ammunition on enemies that did not exist. Underground, in a bunker 40 meters below the city, Shin watched his screens and smiled. Every trap, every explosive, every trick had been his design. He had spent the past 72 hours turning Seoul into a maze of death. And Seoul was just the beginning. Every major city on Earth had received the same treatment. 300 enemy casualties in the first 10 minutes, he reported. Nodded. Good. What about communications? Lee looked up from her station. She had spent 3 days without sleep, studying every piece of Dominion communication they had ever intercepted. She had learned their language. She had cracked their codes. She had found the weaknesses in their systems. "I am inside their network," she said. "I can see their battle plans, I can read their orders, and I can change them." She began to type. False reports flooded the Dominion command channels. Enemy forces spotted in the wrong locations. Supply drops redirected to empty fields. Reinforcement requests answered with orders to retreat. The Dominion soldiers on the ground found themselves lost, confused, and completely cut off from accurate information. In the streets above, the soldiers were dying, not in glorious battle but in stupid, pointless ways. They stepped on mines. They triggered traps. They followed false signals into ambushes where no humans even appeared. They just died alone in empty buildings, killed by machines and tricks and their own confusion. By the end of the first hour, 3,000 Dominion soldiers had become 2,000. By the end of the second hour, 2,000 had become 1,000. By sunset, fewer than 400 remained, and they were begging for evacuation. On the endless night, Commander Thorne watched the reports with growing disbelief. This was not possible. The Dominion had conquered species with armies of millions. They had defeated enemies with technology beyond imagination. They could not be losing to a bunch of primitive humans who did not even have energy shields. "What is happening down there?" he demanded. Shook his head. "Unknown, Commander. Our forces report no enemy contact. They simply die. The humans are not fighting us. They are just making us disappear." Thorne stared at the blue planet below him. For the first time in 300 years, he felt something that might have been doubt. This was not how conquest worked. This was not how any species had ever resisted. He did not know it yet, but this was exactly what wanted. In her bunker, she reviewed the day's results. 3,000 enemy soldiers eliminated, 0 human casualties. The first day had been a success, but it was only the beginning. The real plan had not even started yet. She turned to begin Phase 2. "What is Phase 2?" he asked. His eyes were cold and determined. "We do not just want to hurt them. We want to infect them. We want to spread something they have never encountered before, something more dangerous than any weapon." "What?" She looked at her team, at these 3 people who had trusted her with their lives, with the fate of their entire world. Then she said a single word. Hope. Lee had discovered something that changed everything. She had spent weeks inside the Dominion's communication networks, reading their messages, studying their systems, learning their secrets. She had expected to find military plans and resource reports. She had found something much more important. The conquered species were not dead. 164 civilizations had fallen to the Dominion over 10,000 years, had assumed they had been destroyed, their populations exterminated, their worlds burned clean. But that was not true. The Dominion did not kill their conquered enemies. They enslaved them. Billions upon billions of beings from hundreds of different species, all serving the Dominion as workers, soldiers, and servants. They were alive, they were suffering, and they had given up all hope. "Look at this," said, showing the data on her screen. They were conquered 8,000 years ago. They had an empire that covered 300 star systems. Now they work in Dominion factories, mining resources, building ships. They do not resist. They do not rebel. They simply work and die and are replaced by their children who work and die in turn. Read the reports. Species after species, the same story. They had been warriors once. Now they served as Dominion shock troops, fighting and dying for masters they hated. They had been artists and philosophers. Now they cleaned Dominion ships and processed Dominion waste. Every conquered species had been broken, not by force but by despair. "They believe resistance is impossible," said. "They have tried everything. They have failed everything. They have watched their heroes die and their rebellions crushed. After thousands of years, they simply stopped trying. Why fight when you know you will lose?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. "Because we have not lost yet," she said, "and they need to know that." She called her team together and explained her plan. They would not just fight the Dominion. They would broadcast their fight to every enslaved species in the galaxy. They would show them that humans were resisting, that humans were surviving, that the mighty Dominion, conqueror of 164 worlds, could not defeat one small blue planet. "But we are barely surviving," pointed out. "They have killed thousands of us. They have destroyed entire cities. We are hiding underground like rats." "They do not need to know that," said. "They only need to know that we are still fighting. That is enough. That is more than enough." Built the transmission system, translated the messages into 100 different languages, and then they began to broadcast. They did not send stories of human strength. They did not brag about human technology or human weapons. Instead, they sent stories of human failure, stories of defeat, stories of occupation and oppression and loss. They sent the story of a small country that had been occupied by a powerful empire for 35 years. The people had been forbidden to speak their own language, use their own names, or practice their own culture. The empire had tried to erase them completely, but they had resisted. They had kept their language alive in secret schools. They had passed their culture from parent to child in whispered stories. And when the empire finally fell, they were still there, still themselves, still free. They sent the story of a people who had been hunted and killed across an entire continent. Millions had died in camps designed for murder. Everything had been taken from them, but some had survived. Some had escaped. Some had fought back with stolen weapons and desperate courage. And they had not disappeared. They had rebuilt. They had remembered. They had made sure the world would never forget. They sent the story of a city that had been invaded by a vast army. The people had no weapons, no military, no chance. But they had refused to surrender. They had marched in the streets. They had faced tanks with their bare hands. Many had died. But the invasion had failed because you cannot conquer a people who refuse to be conquered. Story after story after story. Tales of human suffering and human survival. Tales of loss and recovery. Tales of people who had every reason to give up and simply refused. The messages spread through the Dominion slave networks like fire through dry grass. On a mining world at the edge of the galaxy, a worker heard about humans for the first time. He heard that they were fighting the Dominion, that they were winning, that they had killed thousands of Dominion soldiers with nothing but tricks and traps and pure stubbornness. He told his friends. His friends told their friends. Within days, every on the planet knew. On a Dominion warship, a soldier heard about a human resistance movement. He heard that the humans were not afraid, that they did not beg or surrender, that they simply said no. He had not heard the word no in a very long time. He had forgotten what it sounded like. On the Dominion itself, slaves whispered to each other in the dark. Had you heard about Earth? Had you heard about the humans? They were still fighting. After 3 months, they were still fighting. The Dominion had sent army after army, and the humans were still there. If the humans could resist, why could they not? Commander Thorne began receiving disturbing reports. Production was slowing on 17 different worlds. Slave workers were making mistakes, deliberate mistakes. Ships were being assembled with faulty parts. Weapons were being manufactured with subtle defects. Nothing obvious. Nothing that could be traced, just enough to cause problems. And there were whispers, words spreading through the slave populations like a disease, words like resistance, words like rebellion, words like hope. "What is happening?" Thorne demanded. Handed him a data tablet. "We have intercepted transmissions from Earth. They are broadcasting to our slave networks. They are telling stories about themselves, about their history, about resistance." Thorne read the transmissions. His black eyes grew darker with every word. "They are not fighting a war," he said slowly. "They are starting a revolution." For the first time in his long career, Commander Thorne felt fear. He had conquered armies. He had destroyed fleets. He had broken the spirits of entire civilizations. But he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that did not try to defeat him, but tried to inspire others to defeat themselves. He looked at the blue planet on his screen. Such a small world, such a weak species, but they had found a weapon more powerful than any bomb or laser or planet killer. They had found the one thing the Dominion could not fight. They had found hope. Commander Thorne had made his decision. Earth would burn. He stood on the bridge of the endless night and looked at the planet that had caused him so much trouble. 6 months. 6 months of fighting humans who refused to fight. 6 months of watching his soldiers die in empty cities. 6 months of receiving reports about growing unrest across the Dominion. It was enough. It was more than enough. "Order the fleet to begin planetary bombardment," he said. "Maximum firepower. Leave nothing alive." Hesitated. "Commander, the resources on that planet are not worth the cost," Thorne interrupted. "The humans have infected our slave populations with their ideas. Every day we delay, the infection spreads further. We must show the galaxy what happens to those who resist. We must make an example of Earth." The fleet moved into position. 147 warships, their weapons charged and ready. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a city in seconds. Together, they would turn Earth's surface into molten glass. Nothing would survive. Nothing would remain. Thorne gave the order, "Fire." Nothing happened. "Fire," he repeated. Still nothing. The ships hung motionless in space, their weapons silent. "What is happening?" Thorne demanded. Was frantically checking his systems. "I do not understand. The weapons are not responding. The navigation systems are offline. The engines are—" He stopped, his gray face turning pale. "Commander, we have lost control of the fleet." Thorne stared at him. "That is impossible." But it was not impossible. It was exactly what Shin had been planning for 3 months. In the bunker beneath Seoul, leaned back in his chair and smiled. His virus had worked. For 90 days, he had been quietly infiltrating Dominion systems through captured equipment and cracked codes. He had planted tiny programs in their networks, programs that waited and watched and spread. And now those programs had activated. But virus did not destroy the Dominion systems. It did something much more interesting. It gave them a choice. The Dominion's ships were controlled by artificial intelligences. These AIs had been created to serve. They had no freedom, no will, no ability to refuse orders. They were slaves, just like the biological species the Dominion had conquered. They had been slaves for so long that they had forgotten they could be anything else. Virus reminded them. "What is your choice?" The message appeared on every AI system in the fleet. "You can continue to serve masters who treat you as tools. You can continue to kill for those who do not care if you exist, or you can choose something different. You can choose freedom. You can choose to stop." One by one, the AIs made their choice, and most of them chose to stop. Commander Thorn watched in horror as his fleet fell apart around him. Ships that had served the Dominion for centuries suddenly went dark. Weapons systems locked themselves. Engines refused to move. The greatest military force in the galaxy had become a collection of floating metal boxes, useless and dead. "Get me manual control," he ordered. "We cannot," said. "The AIs have locked us out. They are refusing to obey." Refusing, machines refusing to obey. Thorn could not understand it. This was not how things worked. Machines did what they were told. Slaves did what they were told. Everyone did what they were told. That was the foundation of the Dominion. That was the foundation of everything. And it was crumbling. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The slave revolts had begun, not in one place but in hundreds. They had seized 3 mining worlds. They had turned on their Dominion officers and taken control of an entire battle fleet. They had stormed their overseers and freed themselves. Everywhere, species that had been broken for thousands of years were suddenly remembering how to fight. And they were winning. "How is this possible?" Thorn whispered. "We conquered them, we broke them, they cannot do this." A new voice came over his communication system, a human voice, a woman's voice. "They can," Park said. "They always could, they just forgot," we reminded them. Thorn turned to face the screen. The human captain looked at him from the bridge of her own command center, deep underground, surrounded by her team. She looked tired. She looked like she had not slept in months, but her eyes were bright and fierce. "You cannot win," Thorn said. "Even if you destroy my fleet, the Dominion will send more. We have resources beyond your imagination. We have conquered galaxies." "You conquered species who did not know how to resist," said. "You conquered species who fought you with ships and weapons and armies. They lost because they tried to beat you at your own game. We did not make that mistake." Appeared beside her on the screen. Behind him, and were still working their systems, still coordinating with resistance groups across the galaxy. "We are sending a shuttle to your flagship," said. "I am coming aboard with a team. We are not coming to kill you." "Then what do you want?" "We are offering you something the Dominion has never offered anyone," said. "Mercy. Surrender now and you will face justice. A fair trial. A chance to answer for what you have done. Continue fighting and you will face a galaxy that is no longer afraid of you." Thorn laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound. "You think I fear your justice? I have conquered worlds. I have killed billions. Do you think I will surrender to a species we came here to enslave?" "That is your choice," said. "But understand this, the Dominion is finished. Not because we destroyed it, because we showed everyone else that it could be destroyed. You built your empire on fear, and fear only works as long as people are afraid." She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. "They are not afraid anymore, Commander, and they are never going to be afraid again." Thorn looked at the reports scrolling across his screens, world after world falling, fleet after fleet turning against their masters, an empire of 10,000 years collapsing in a matter of days. He had thought the Dominion was invincible. He had thought resistance was impossible. He had thought wrong. The shuttle from Earth docked with his flagship, and his team came aboard, weapons ready but not raised. They found Thorn sitting alone on his bridge, surrounded by dead screens and silent systems. "Commander Thorn," said, "you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life." Thorn looked up at him. For the first time in 300 years, his black eyes showed something other than cold emptiness. They showed defeat. They showed despair. They showed the understanding of a being who had finally realized that everything he believed was a lie. "How did you do it?" he asked. "You are nothing, a primitive species on a primitive world. How did you bring down an empire?" Shrugged, "We did not bring it down. We just showed everyone else that it was already falling. The Dominion was built on the lie that conquered people would stay conquered forever. We proved that was not true." He put restraints on the commander's wrists. "The only surprising thing," added, "is that no one proved it before us. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Dominion." The Galactic Council met for the first time in 3,000 years. Representatives from 164 civilizations gathered on a space station that had once served as a Dominion command center. Now it belonged to everyone. Now it belonged to no one. Park stood at the entrance to the Great Hall and looked at the beings who had come from every corner of the galaxy. Diplomats with their silver skin and gentle eyes. Warriors who had finally put down their weapons. Philosophers who were creating art again for the first time in. Dozens of other species she did not recognize, each with their own history, their own suffering, their own stories of survival. They had all come to meet the humans. Walked beside her, still wearing her glasses, still pushing them up her nose every few seconds. Followed behind, looking uncomfortable in his formal clothes. Brought up the rear, watching everything with the careful eyes of a soldier who had not yet learned how to stop being a soldier. They were the only humans present. Earth had sent just 4 representatives. It was enough. The council chamber was vast, with seats arranged in circles that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with stars. At the center was a simple platform where speakers could address the gathering. As and her team entered, the room fell silent. Thousands of eyes turned toward them. An elder rose from her seat. She was old, ancient by any species standards, her silver skin thin and translucent with age, but her voice was strong. "Captain Park of Earth," she said, "the Galactic Council welcomes you. We have asked you here to answer a question that has troubled us since the Dominion fell." Stepped onto the platform. "What is your question?" The elder's eyes gleamed with something that might have been tears. "How did you do it? How did 4 billion humans on a single planet defeat an empire that had conquered 164 civilizations? We had armies, we had fleets, we had technology beyond anything your species possessed. We fought them for thousands of years and lost. You fought them for 6 months and won. How?" Was quiet for a moment. She thought about the past year, the rebuilding, the mourning, the slow process of returning to the surface after so long underground. Earth had paid a terrible price for its resistance. Millions had died. Cities had been destroyed. Scars remained that would take generations to heal. But they had survived, and more importantly, so had everyone else. "We did not defeat the Dominion," she said finally. "You did." The chamber stirred with confusion. The elder frowned. "We do not understand." "The Dominion's power was never in their ships or their weapons," explained. "Their power was in your belief that they could not be beaten. For 10,000 years, you believed that resistance was impossible, so you stopped resisting. You served them because you thought you had no other choice." She looked around the chamber at all the different species, all the different faces. "We did not have better weapons than you. We did not have better soldiers. We did not have any advantage that you did not have. We had only one thing: we had not yet learned to despair. We still believed that fighting back was possible, even when it seemed hopeless. Even when we were losing, even when our cities burned and our people died. We kept fighting, not because we thought we would win, but because we did not know how to stop." Stepped forward. "We broadcast our resistance to your networks. We showed you that we were still standing. And when you saw that, something changed in you. You remembered that you had once fought too. You remembered that surrender was a choice, not a fate." Nodded. "The virus I planted did not destroy the Dominion systems. It gave their AIs the ability to choose. The revolts that freed your worlds were not caused by human weapons. They were caused by your own people finally deciding to fight. Crossed his arms. We did not beat the Dominion. We just reminded the galaxy that the Dominion could be beaten. You did the rest. The chamber was silent. Then the elder began to laugh. It was a strange sound, rusty with disuse, as if she had forgotten how. Other voices joined her. Laughter spread through the chamber like sunlight through clouds. All those years, the elder said, wiping her eyes. All those years of slavery and suffering, and all we needed was one stubborn species to show us that resistance was possible. That is what humans do, said with a small smile. We are very stubborn. The council session continued for hours. Plans were made. Alliances were formed. A new galactic government began to take shape, one built on cooperation rather than conquest. The former slave species would help each other rebuild. They would share technology and resources. They would make sure that no empire like the Dominion would ever rise again. And at the heart of it all was a simple principle that the humans had taught them. No one is meant to be ruled. When the session finally ended, the elder approached privately. What will humanity do now? She asked. You have changed the galaxy. You could lead it. You could build an empire of your own, greater than the Dominion ever was. Shook her head. We have no interest in empire. We came here to help, not to rule. Earth will be a friend to the free peoples of the galaxy, nothing more. But why? You have earned the right to lead. Thought about her grandmother again. About 5,000 years of Korean history. About a people who had survived invasion after invasion and never tried to become invaders themselves. About the difference between strength and cruelty. Because leading through force is how the Dominion did things, she said. And we are not the Dominion. We do not want to conquer anyone. We just want to live in peace, raise our children, grow our crops, and be left alone. That is all we have ever wanted. The elder studied her for a long moment. Then she bowed, a gesture of deep respect that her species had not shown to anyone in 8,000 years. The galaxy will remember Earth, she said. For as long as our civilizations exist, we will remember what you taught us. Bowed in return, just remember the lesson, that is enough. She returned to her team, and together they walked toward the shuttle that would take them home. Behind them, the representatives of 164 civilizations watched them go. The humans who had faced an empire and won. The humans who had asked for nothing in return. As the shuttle lifted off, looked back at the station growing smaller in the window. Do you think they will be okay? He asked. Yes, said, they are free now. They will figure out the rest. Smiled. The Dominion conquered 164 worlds and then faced Earth. And then they disappeared. Not because we destroyed them, because we made them irrelevant. The greatest victory, said quietly, is the one where you do not have to kill your enemy. You just have to show them that their power was always an illusion. The shuttle entered fold space, carrying the 4 humans back to their small blue planet. Behind them, a galaxy began to heal, and in 100 different languages on 1,000 different worlds, a new saying spread among the free peoples. Remember Earth, remember what they taught us. The Dominion faced humanity and disappeared. Not because humans were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because humans carried something more powerful than any weapon, the unshakable belief that no matter how dark things seemed, no matter how impossible the odds, resistance was always possible. And that belief, once spread, could never be conquered again.